Namaste everyone. Good morning. And at the outset, let me take this opportunity to welcome all of you to Sanskriti Samvardhan and Sanshothan Pratishthan and the Sanskrit Utsav that we've been organizing. I'm happy that today we are on our 19th day of this Utsav, and needless to say that I'm sure everybody is enjoying this part of the Utsav. So at the outset, let me take this opportunity to welcome our speaker for today, Dr. Prasad Bhide. I'll be speaking more about him in a while. But before that, let me also take this opportunity to welcome the President of SSASP, Shri Dilip Karambekar ji, the Executive President, Dr. Kala Acharya ma'am, and the dignitaries, many speakers who've been speaking all throughout this series, and they're also present in the audience here. Apart from that, all the listeners, students, and others who joined the session on Zoom as well as on Facebook and YouTube Live. So welcome to the 19th day of Sanskrit Utsava. To start with, we are going to have Dr. Prasad Bhide speaking to us today, and I'm sure many of you are acquainted with him. But for all those who are not, let me take this opportunity to formally introduce Dr. Prasad Bhide to all of you. Dr. Prasad Bhide today will be speaking on this topic, Introduction to Linguistics and its roots in the Indian knowledge systems. He is basically a postgraduate in two subjects. One is Sanskrit and the other is linguistics. Apart from this, he has his PhD from the prestigious IIT Mumbai, where he has worked on word analysis in modern Sanskrit lexicography. This is just one of the interests, but apart from that, he is also he's equally involved in dramatics. And yes, to be very specific, Sanskrit dramatics. He has to his credit 3 plays that he has written and 3 skits that he has presented and written in Sanskrit. It is not just writing, but to his credit are also different awards which he has received for presenting them, for writing, for acting and directing. So we have a multifaceted personality here speaking to us today. On the academic front, he has been presenting papers at several national and international conferences. He's also been invited, he had been invited earlier to stage one of his well-known plays on Kalidasa to the US as well. He has to his credit several papers and publications in peer-reviewed journals. So a person who on the academic front and who on the theatrical front looks at theater as academics do and academics as a place to create newer things is Dr. Prasad Bhide, and I welcome him to SSASP, Sanskriti Samvardhan and Sanshodhana Pratishthan. So today, Dr. Prasad Bhide will be speaking to us on the topic, like I mentioned before, Introduction to Linguistics and its roots in Indian IKS, that is Indian Knowledge Systems. So over to you, Dr. Prasad. You have about 45 minutes of talk time, followed by a few questions, and then our Executive President, Dr. Kala Acharya, will conclude the session. So over to you. Have a nice time.
Namaste. Am I audible, Ruchita madam?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Let me share a presentation first.
Prasad, you are not audible.
Am I not audible?
No, you are not audible. Please check your mic. Unmute it. He's made the host is. You are unmuted.
Yes. Am I audible now?
You are unmuted from the host's end.
Yes. Am I audible now?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. Dhanyawad. Thank you. Give me a moment. I will share a presentation and then we will start. Yes. Ruchita madam, thank you very much for this nice introduction. I would like to begin this session with a prayer in consonance with our tradition. And I would like to borrow Bhavabhuti's words. Ruchita madam has already said that I have a passion for drama and academically I am a student of linguistics. So I would like to borrow Bhavabhuti's words to begin this session which is related to linguistics. This is the Nandi Shloka of Bhavabhuti's Uttara Ramacharitam and it has some relevance to today's topic. So let me recite that prayer first. इदं कविभ्यो पूर्वेभ्यो नमो वाकं प्रशास्महे वन्दे महीचता वाचम् अमृतात्मनः कला नमो नमः नमस्कार. So Bhavabhuti salutes Purva Kavi and then Vak or Vani. In the same way, I bow down to all scholars of grammar who are part of the rich tradition of Indian knowledge systems. And I also bow down before Vak, Vani, the goddess in the form of speech. Bhavabhuti says, Idam Amrutat Manaha Kalam. Vani, speech, in fact, an aspect, a digit of Amrutatva, of that supreme principle, that is Parabrahma. I am purposely reciting this verse because this thought, Vande Mahicha Tam Vacham Amrutat Manaha Kalam, this thought is an essential feature, is a distinguishing feature of Indian linguistic tradition. This thought is an important contribution to the theoretical linguistics or philosophy of language from Indian knowledge tradition. At the outset, I thank Dr. Kala Acharya, who is the director of this institute, for giving me an opportunity to express my thoughts about linguistics and linguistics in pre-modern India or in Indian knowledge systems. So friends, as it is indicated by the title, this is going to be an introductory session. The audience that I expect for this session has no background or some background of linguistics and Indian linguistic tradition. And therefore, I will try to keep this session as far as possible simple, brief, but explicit. We will be talking about two major domains of study. One is linguistics from the modern or more appropriately Western perspective. And on that background, we will see the linguistic thought in our tradition. We will be addressing four major points in this session. First of all, what is linguistics? What are its branches? How did linguistic thought evolve in Indian knowledge systems? And what is our contribution to philosophy of language or to theoretical linguistics? So let us begin from the first question. What is linguistics? Linguistics, the term linguistics has a suffix ICS which we find in many subject names, in the names of many sciences. For example, statistics, physics, or mathematics, and many others. What does it mean? Does this suffix indicate anything? Does it have any meaning? It means a systematic study. Study that takes place in a particular frame. And linguistics means the systematic study of language. You can see on the slide that the word language is written in capital letters. It doesn't have the article A before that. So linguistics is not the study of a particular language. Linguistics can concern itself with any language because it studies language as a concept. It looks at language as a system. But what is a system? If we look into the dictionary, the meaning of this word system is given as a system is an organic whole which of course has interdependent components. So what are the features of a system? A system has components, number one. Number two, these components are joined to each other in such a way that it forms a single entity. It becomes a whole. And number three, these components are interdependent. That means they are functionally connected to each other. Now, if we look at the world around us, we will find that almost everything that is around us befits this definition of a system. Our body is a system. I have taken two examples as examples of system. First is the hydraulic cycle that we all must have studied during our school days. So seawater, because of sunlight, seawater gets converted into vapor. Then vapor goes upwards. It leads to rainfall. Due to rainfall, groundwater is generated. This groundwater goes to sea. Again, this seawater gets a form of vapor, and so on. So this is a system. It has parts. They are connected to each other. And they are connected to each other in such a way that the function of one part depends upon the output of another part. This is a system. Another example. How do we get this water? So this rainwater is conserved, it's saved into a huge lake. Then through the pipelines, huge pipelines of municipality, municipal corporation, this lake is saved into huge water tanks, municipality tanks, corporation tanks. From these tanks of municipal corporation, this water comes to a huge tank, underground tank in our housing society. From this underground tank, it is saved on a tank on the terrace, and from there it comes to home. Here also we can see that there are different parts. They are associated with each other, and it forms a whole. It forms a single entity. Now let us extend this idea further and apply it to the concept of language. Can language be a system? Is it a system? If it is a system, then it has to have parts. those parts are to be connected to each other in such a way that it forms a singular entity, and the function of one part depends upon the function of another part. Do we find these three features in language as a concept? So linguistics looks at language as a system and considers that the language has three components. Three essential components of language are: the first one, sound. It is the fundamental primarily perceptible component of language. When we talk about language, what form of language do we consider as a primary form of language? Just think, how does a baby learn a language? By hearing. What a baby hears, baby tries to imitate that. So the first and foremost perception of language takes place in the form of sound. So this is the first level of language, the outermost level of language, because it is the easily perceptible level of language. So we can imagine a pastry. Language can be considered as a pastry. The uppermost level is of sounds. Sounds like ch, t, po, etc. What is the next level of language? What is the next layer of this pastry in the form of language? The next layer is structure. What does it mean? These sounds that are audible come together and structures are formed. Let us take an example of three sounds: t, p, and a. So one possible structure by combining these sounds together is t, a, and p. Tap. But there are many other possibilities. So if we put po at the initial place and make a structure, we will have something like po, a, and t. Pat. Yet another possibility. Let us put a at the beginning and we'll get a structure like a, that means a, p, and t, apt. In this way, with limited number of sounds, unlimited number of structures can be formed, and therefore it becomes the next level of language. This particular feature of language is termed as duality of pattern. Language works at two levels. There is duality in language. First level is sounds, isolated individual sound units. Second level is different permutation and combinations of these sound units which generate different structures. So in layperson's terminology, structure means words. Words come together and phrases are formed. Phrases come together and sentences are formed, and so on. This is the next level of language. But language has one more level, which can be considered as the core of language, the essence of language. In terms of philosophy, it is the Atman, it is the soul of language. And what is that? That level is meaning. A structure becomes valid only if it is based on meaning. It is connected to meaning. Otherwise, a structure cannot be considered as a valid structure in a language. So let us take the same example. three sounds: a, po, and to. So APT, PAT, TAP, and there is one more possibility, TPA. But we don't think of this possibility when we consider these three sounds. Why? Because TPA doesn't make any sense unless it is used as an abbreviation, as a short form. TPA doesn't make any sense to us, and therefore when we are given with these three sounds, a, po, and to, we say yes, apt is one possible structure, pat is another possibility, tap is one more possibility. But what else? We consider only these three possibilities of structure because only these three structures make sense. And therefore, we say that a structure becomes valid only if it is based on meaning, only if it has meaning, it conveys a sense. In this way, meaning is the soul, meaning is the core, meaning is the innermost, unmanifest aspect of language, the manifestation of which takes place through structures and sounds. In this way, language is also a system as it has components. These components are connected with each other and it forms a singular whole. It forms a singular entity. Okay. So this is a basic idea of linguistics and basic idea of language with respect to this branch of study termed as linguistics. Now, on the basis of this analysis, there are different branches of linguistics. So there are two branches that are concerned with the study of sound level. One is phonetics, another is phonology. Phone means speech sound. The term phone means speech sound, a sound that is a part of human speech. And phonetics is the study of universal features of speech sounds. Features of speech sound that are applicable to any language are studied in phonetics. For example, p of pat is a bilabial sound, or t of talwar, the initial sound of talwar is a dental sound because the tip of the tongue touches the teeth while we pronounce this sound. This is phonetic study. In any language, the that is pronounced would be a dental sound. This is phonetic study. As opposed to phonetics, phonology studies the language specific features of speech sounds. Phonology is concerned with the features, peculiarities of speech sounds that are specific to a language. For example, in Sanskrit, there are a number of principles that we find which are specific to Sanskrit language. They do not apply to any other language. All such features are studied under phonology. Let's take an example. in show and a small vowel, if come together, then a small change takes place. Let us not get into the details of this, but this small alteration that takes place, it's specifically with respect to Sanskrit language and is not applicable to English or any other language which does not belong to this language family. So this is the phonological study. To summarize, phonetics is the study of universal features of sounds, and phonology is the study of language specific features of speech sound. We have to keep this thing in mind, because in the latter half of this session, we have to search for this kind of analysis that has taken place in ancient India and in our knowledge tradition, or in our knowledge tradition. Let us move ahead and look at the next branch or branches of linguistics. There are two branches that are concerned with the study of structures of language. One is morphology, another is syntax. Morphology studies, in layperson's terminology, once again, morphology studies the word forms, the smaller structures, while syntax studies the relations between these smaller forms when they become a part of a bigger structure. So once again, in layperson's terminology, if morphology is the study of a word, then syntax can be considered as the study of a sentence. It is the analysis of a sentence. And then the branch that deals with the meaning aspect, the aspect of meaning of language, is semantics. Semantics is the study of meaning. So we study different theories of meaning. We study different relations between meanings like homonymy, polysemy, synonymy, antonymy, and so on. These are primary branches of linguistics. There are a number of other applied branches of linguistics like lexicography, psycholinguistics, and computational linguistics, which is in trend these days. Now, on this background, let us have a look at the linguistic analysis in Indian knowledge systems. So we all know that Veda is regarded as the first utterance. And among Vedas, Rigveda is regarded as the fundamental or first text. Rigveda is also termed as Samhita. Samhita literally means a text. And these Samhitas have been transmitted from one generation to another through oral tradition. So we have learned Vedas through oral tradition, and therefore they are also termed as Shruti. They are to be recited, so we call them Samhita Path. In order to preserve these texts, this Samhita Patha, different versions of Samhita Patha were created. When Vedas were mainly recited. And one such version of Samhita Patha is Pada Patha. Pada Patha. Patha again means a text which is to be recited, and Pada means a component, a constituent. Samhita Pathas were recited or rewritten in the form of Pada Patha, and this Pada Patha is regarded as the earliest available grammatical commentaries of the Vedic Samhitas. We can consider them as the earliest available linguistic analysis of a text of a variety of language that is termed as ancient Indo-Aryan language or Vedic Sanskrit. Now, what is Pada Patha? Pada Patha is a word-for-word recitation of Vedic text. Means what? So let us take the example of the very first Rucha. Agnimire purohitam yajnasya deva rutvijam hotaram ratnadhatamam. This is Samhita Patha. But Pada Patha of this particular Rucha would be like this. Agni, Ide, Puraha, Hitam. Let us compare this particular part of the Rucha to the Samhita Patha. Agni Mele Purohitam and Agni Ide Puraha Hitam. What do we find? We find that the constituents of the Samhita Patha are isolated from each other in Pada Patha. Now, while isolating these constituents, the one who has isolated it has to be aware of certain things. So, for example, Agni may have come together in a particular way, which is different from the way in which Purohitam have come together. While isolating these units from each other, we find that Padapathakara has applied the rules that are considered as rules of phonology in modern linguistics or Western linguistics. This is a first and primary kind of linguistic analysis that we found. But why was this Padapatha basically done? What was the primary motive of doing this Padapatha? The primary motive of doing the Padapatha, as stated by V.N. Jha, who is a stalwart, who is a great grammarian, scholar of grammar, Nyaya, and many other branches of Indian knowledge systems. So he says that the ultimate goal was to preserve the Vedic texts by drawing attention to those parts of the text which were those most subjected to modifications, such as the word final position. The point to be noted here is, in Padapatha, the form of a word that we find may be different from the form of a word that is found in Samhita Pati. And Padapathakara was aware of what modifications have taken place in the form of a word when it is put in proximity with another word, and this is a kind of morphological analysis of a text. So Padapatha can be regarded as the first or primary morphological analysis of Vedic Sanskrit. Let us move ahead, and then we know that Vedas which were primarily recited were later on documented, and various branches to study the Vedic texts evolved along with time. They are known as Vedanga. And there are 6 such auxiliary sciences or techniques to understand the text of Veda or to understand Samhita Pati. Those 6 techniques are Shiksha, Kalpa, Vyakarana, Chanda, Jyotisha, and Nirukta. 4 among them are purely in the form of linguistic analysis, are purely linguistic in nature. The first one is Shiksha, then Vyakarana, then Nirukta, and also Chanda. Let us talk about each of these branches briefly. I think I am left with some 15 odd minutes. So let us talk about each of them briefly. The term Shiksha is derived from the verbal root Shiksha, which means to train. To train someone in what? To train in recitation. Because these texts were transmitted from one generation to another, primarily through recitation. So there has to be uniformity in recitation. With this need, this technique evolved, which is called training. Training in recitation, training in pronunciation. So how to utter a particular word? How to utter a particular sound was the theme, was the central idea of this branch that is termed as Shiksha. Next is Vyakarana. What is Vyakarana? As the term suggests, Vyakarana is the science or technique of forming words. But in practice, it also means vice versa. It means that Vyakarana is also the technique, is also the study of analyzing word forms. So how a particular word is formed? What are its components? Splitting that word into the smallest unit, smallest either meaningful unit or smallest unit without meaning, that is a sound. A very exhaustive analysis of forms that were found in texts was done under this branch of study called Vyakarana. Then comes Nirukta. निशेषेण uktam iti niruktam. This is how it is defined. The term is defined. What is nirukta? Nirukta is a commentary over the set of words that are found in Vedic texts. What is the form of this commentary? So a word from the text is taken, and Niruktakara, the author of Nirukta, makes an effort to interpret that word. Interpret that word. For example, the word Samudra. What does it mean? What does it indicate? So this is a word form, and there is the physical object or idea. The Niruktakara tries to establish and interpret the relation between this word form and the physical object or idea. And in this effort, Niruktakara describes the meaning of this word with respect to the essence of that word, with respect to the reference that it makes. Next branch is Chanda, studies of meters. Since this Vedic text was recited, for the ease of recitation, the text was created in a particular rhythm. So the classification of these rhythms was a concern of Chanda. We are not dealing with remaining two branches, remaining two Vedangas, because that is not part of today's session. It is not related to this context. Now, if we look at these four angas, four techniques of understanding and interpreting text, Shiksha, Vyakarana, Nirukta and Chanda, can we consider it as linguistic analysis of a text? Does it relate to any branch of linguistics in Western terms or in modern terms? Or does it deal with any level of language? We have seen three levels of language. Let us connect this slide to that slide where we saw three different levels of language. So Shiksha, in modern terms or in Western terms, is phonetics primarily. So there are different texts, there are different granthas on Shiksha that teach the recitation of Vedic texts. And we find a detailed phonetic analysis, of sounds that appear in the text or that are to be pronounced or recited. So primary classification of sounds into vowels and consonants, swara and vyanjana has been done. Vyanjanas are further divided on the basis of place of articulation, uchcharana sthana, and manner of articulation, uchcharana prayatna. I am purposely quoting all terms from Western linguistics, from contemporary linguistics, manner of articulation, place of articulation, etc. Vowels are further classified on the basis of the duration that is required for their pronunciation, long, short, etc. On the basis of accent, specifically, this is specifically related to the Vedic Sanskrit. So they are classified on the basis of accent, and we find 18 varieties of one vowel. in Shiksha Granth. So an exhaustive linguistic analysis is found to have been done. Phonetic analysis is found to have been done in Shiksha Granthas. Vyakarana deals with the word formation process. Then there are different categories of words that are described. The features of each word category, each word form, how a particular form is derived from another form, and what could be the possible relations between a noun form and a verbal form, an action indicating form. All these issues are seen to have been discussed, described under this branch, Vyakarana. And Nirukta, as I already stated, as we have already discussed, deals with the meaning part. At this point, I must state that in Vyakarana, in our tradition, there are two major branches. One is termed as Paninian school of grammar, Paniniya Vyakaranam, and another is school of grammar, which is beyond, or let us not say beyond, which is different from the Paninian school of grammar. We cannot discuss more about that due to want of time. I am aware that I am left only with 5 to 7 minutes, but I must mention that Panini, through his text Ashtadhyayi, dealt with language in such a way that Ashtadhyayi became a common text to study all three levels of language. So we find phonetics, we find phonetic analysis of Sanskrit in Ashtadhyayi. Morphology and syntax are obviously the part of Ashtadhyayi, and we also find the semantic analysis of different forms in Ashtadhyayi. We cannot talk more about that. Let us go ahead. And I would like to talk in brief about the contribution, Indian contribution to philosophy of language, to theoretical linguistics. So we started with the point that linguistics looks at language as a system, and Ferdinand de Saussure, who is regarded as the father of modern linguistics or Western linguistics, stated that language is a system, and it is a system of signs. Just as the red color on the signal pole indicates that we should not go ahead, word functions in the same way. Likewise, the word functions. This is what Saussure states. Saussure says that word is also a sign. The words that we use are also in the form of a sign, like the signal pole. This sign has two components. May it be the signal pole or may it be a word. It has two components. One is signifier and another is signified. Let us simplify it. And in layperson's terminology, let us say that a sign is made up of an indicator and indicated. So indicator corresponds to signifier and indicated corresponds to signified. So the red color on the signal pole is the indicator, and we understand that we have to stop is the indicated aspect of that indicator. Now let us extend this analogy to the words that are used in a language, and then we can say that the sound or the combination of sounds that we utter is the indicator or signifier, and what we understand after hearing that set of sounds is the indicated or signified. So when I say dog, immediately I think of a peculiar animal. Or when I say cow, immediately an animal with some distinguishing features appears in my mind. Saussure calls it mental image. And sign is a combination of this mental image, which is indicated by the set of sounds, which is termed as sound image. So sound image plus mental image is sign. This is what Ferdinand de Saussure, the father of modern linguistics, has stated in his theory of sign model. Patanjali, probably in 1st century BC, wrote a text, Mahabhashya, which was a commentary on Ashtadhyayi. And in the very first chapter of Mahabhashya, the very first issue that is discussed is, what is grammar? Grammar is the study of words. But what is a word? And then there is a dialogue. Kastarhi Shabdaha. Yena Uchcharitena Sasna Langula Kapuda Kura Vishaninam Sampratyayo Bhavati Saha Shabda. What is a word? When we say cow, what is a word? Is it the animal that we think of after uttering that sound? Teacher says, no. Dravyam Namata. It is an object. Then, is it the distinguishing features that particular animal has, which we perceive, which we realize after uttering a word? Is that word? No. That is not word. Gunaha Namasaha. These are all qualities. In this way, the dialogue goes on, and the dialogue is concluded with the sentence that Yena Uchcharitena Sasna Langula Kakuda Kura Vishaninam Sampratyayo Bhavati Saha Shabdaha. I have taken only 2 words from that, 2 crucial words, aspects of that statement, Uchcharita and Sampratyaya Karaka. And Patanjali says that a word has 2 essential features. One, it is Uchcharita, and another, mere utterance is not enough. It has to be Sampratyaya Karaka. That means it has to lead to creation of a mental image. And such a combination, such a dyad is termed as Shabda. So we find exact parallel. Uchcharitatva is signifier. Sampratyaya Karakatva is signified. So while describing what is word, Patanjali is actually talking about the process of signification. Now this is just one example. If we study various texts in our linguistic tradition, we will find that there are certain texts which talk about analysis, like an engineer, like Ashtadhyayi, while there are other texts which are in the form of commentary or Ashtadhyayi, which put forward certain fundamental concepts with respect to language. One such example is Patanjali's Mahabhashya, Bhartrhari's Vakyapadiya, Nagesha Bhatta's Paribhashendu Shekhara. These are some examples. To conclude, I would like to go back to the very first statement that I made during this session. that this is an introductory session about Western linguistic theory or Western linguistics and linguistic thought in ancient India or Indian knowledge systems. I would like to conclude by saying that a full-fledged course which handles the evolution of linguistic thought in ancient Indian tradition or Indian knowledge systems can be undertaken by an institute like Sanskruti Samvardhana Pratisthana, and that will be a great contribution in itself to our rich Indian knowledge tradition. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Prasad Bide, for putting so simply the concepts that are there to the people who may not have been initiated in this field. And I think at this very moment, one of the simplest things that comes to mind, which of the inseparables between the word and meaning, are vagarthaviva sampruktav vagarthav pratipattaya jagata pitarau vande Parvati Parameshwaro. So in a simple manner, which has such a profound meaning, but it put very simply shows the inseparable aspect of word and meaning. And I request at this point Dr. Kala Acharya to conclude this session. Dr. Kala Acharya. Ma'am?
Hello.
Yes.
Yes. Dr. Prasad Bide, how to congratulate you, I don't know. You talked about linguistics in such a simple way, but all the essence has come into your speech. What just I want to say that when you talked about Rigveda and the first verse, Agni Mele Purohitam, it is really the Padapatha is really the origin of grammar, because then we come to know that Ide becomes Ide in Sanhita Patha and Ide, we always understand when in two particular vowels, in any two vowels, when L comes, it is actually D, that we understand because of Padapatha and Sanhita Patha when we study together. As you had talked about Rigveda, I also want to say that in Rigveda about language, there was a deep thought given to it when it was said, Chatvari Vak Parimita Padani Tani Vidur Brahmanaya Manishinaha Guha Trini Nitanengayanti Turiyam Vacho Manusha Vadanti, that it is Turiya Vach which we speak, but there is Parapasanti, Madhyama, Vaikari, etc. You also talked about Shiksha, and in Shiksha, especially in Paniniya Shiksha, how word comes, how we have the desire of speaking, that also has been mentioned when it has been said, Atma Buddhya Sametyarthan Mano Yungte Vivakshaya, Manaha Kayagni Mahanti, Saprerayati Marutam, that soul through intellect that understands the things, and it inspires the mind to have a desire to speak, and then mind stimulates fire in the body, and then fire stimulates Vayu, and then we speak. But with all these other things, what I want to say that linguistics is not a science in itself complete, because the study of language has given birth to many other sciences. For example, if we talk about sociology or Samaj Shastra, Samaj Vignan, how it has influenced language. For example, there is a word in Sanskrit, vidhava, that for a lady who is a widow. But there is no word for a man who has lost his wife. Why? Because in those days also, man was allowed to remarry, whereas woman was not allowed to remarry. Or in, another example is that if we say asura, we find that in Rigvedic sutras, we find that the word asura is used also for deity having immense power, strength, whereas asura is also, later on, we find that asura word is also used in a sense which has a demon, in the sense of a demon. And in Bhagavad Gita, we find asuri sampad, exactly opposite with daivi sampad. So when there is a change in the society, social norms or social, when people think in another way, then the meaning of the word also changes. The popular example is about Devanam Priyaha Priyadarshi Raja Ahev, about Ashoka when he calls himself as Devanam Priyaha in Sanskrit. I am saying not in Pali. When every inscription starts with this, Devanam Priya means he wants to say that he is favorite of gods, whereas the same word got meaning of in the sense of full. It was used in later language. Why? Because there was, in some sense, there was some a negative thought about the religion, about Buddhism later on came, and then the meaning of the word also changed. Or another word is Pakhanda. The Pakhanda word, Pakhanda Sanskrit word is used, actually originally it was used in the sense of a person who follows a religion, religious person. But whereas in the later times, it means Pakhanda means a person who is Nastic or a heretic or a Buddhist or a Jain monk. And then we find a statement Pakhandaha Panditamanyaha te kimapi na janate, that Pakhandas, they think that they are scholars or learned persons, but they don't know anything. How this change comes in the meaning of the word? One of the reasons, there are many other reasons, but this samaj, the society, its pressure of the customs or of the particular situation from time to time which changes has brought change into meaning. So this perhaps on this aspect of linguistics, it can be studied more. You also talked about Nirukta, and just once in one sentence I will conclude. When you talked about Nirukta and you told about the etymology of Samudra, but when later on in Amaru or Amar Shatak, Amar Kosh, sorry, not Amar Shatak, it is very different text. When Amar Kosh used all the synonyms, Samudra, and it gives at the same time Ratnakara. So the Sanskrit students, they think that Ratnakara and Samudra has the same meaning, whereas Ratnakara denotes that the inner wealth of Samudra. What are the things which we can get from, which we get from an ocean? So different aspects are suggested, indicated by different words in Sanskrit, though they are all synonyms. So Nirukta exactly point out what does it mean. Whereas the synonyms which we give, they don't point at that particular strength of that word. And that, I think one has to remember when he uses words effectively if he wants to use the word. Thank you very much once again for your speech. Thanks.
Thank you, madam.
Thank
Hello.
you, ma'am. Yes.
Hello,
Thank you
Ruchika.
so much.
May I ask one question?
Sorry.
May I ask one doubt?
Thanks.
Yes, yes, please.
Prasad, I would like to ask one doubt only. Is there any possibility that this term shiksha is derived from the root shik, shikati, to speak? For shiksha is all about the way of speaking, the phonetics. And shiksha as a training, it has a very common applicability, you know. It could be training of anything, not necessarily phonetics. So is
Right,
there
you are. So
any-
there are different views, madam. Yes.
Hello?
Yes, madam. You are right. There are different views.
Because what I felt, shika, shikati is to speak. So it must be the root in shiksha. This is what I feel.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. So since we are close to the end of the session, and I don't anticipate that there are many questions, but there's appreciation for you in the chat box, so you can take a look at that. We come to the end of this session, but this is not the end of Sanskrutotsava because we have more to come. So before I officially thank and sign off, may I request Atharva to please put up tomorrow's program so everyone is aware. Tomorrow though it is Ganesha Chaturthi, and if you thought that the celebration of knowledge will end. We cannot. We have to go when the God of wisdom is being celebrated. It's his celebration. We have to continue with our sessions as well. So in Sanskritotsav tomorrow, same time at 11 a.m., we will have Rajashri Deshpande ji, who will be speaking on comparison of Advaita Vedanta and Patanjali Yoga Sutra. So I'm sure that everybody will be able to take that little time out for 1 hour and be present here for the session tomorrow. And before we end, let me officially thank Dr. Prasad Bhide for putting up his points very succinctly. And of course, thank you to our president, Shri Dilip Karambelkar ji, our executive president, Dr. Kala Acharya ma'am, the speakers who have always been supportive and being present here, like Dr. Ranjana Naigaonkar, Dr. Kanchan Mande. We also have some senior people like Rajendra Datar sir who are there, and Dr. Shriram Agashe. Apart from that, I'm sure a lot of people today, because the topic and the speaker is quite well known, have been present here in addition to our regular people also, that is on Zoom, Facebook, and on YouTube. So thank you, everybody. I must thank the news, our partners, media partners, Saptahik Vivek, Hindi Vivek, Mahatarun Bharat, and News Bharati for taking care of the live links and the presentation ahead. So thank you so much. And once again, I thank everyone, and we meet again tomorrow at 10:50. Please continue to use the same link that you've been using, and see you again tomorrow. Wish everybody a wonderful day today, Haritalika, and tomorrow we'll meet during Ganesh Chaturthi. Dhanyavada, Namo Namaha.